Tonight, a $3.3 million cost for the VITAB contract. One of the biggest redevelopments ever planned for Canberra. And a threat to Canberra's petrol supplies averted for the moment. Good evening. In the national news tonight, a plunge in the national unemployment rate. And the row continues over Sydney's casino. First, though, all Canberra's news. The ACTTAB-VITAB affair is finally over. After weeks of negotiations, the ACT government has severed its links with the Vanuatu-based betting firm VITAB, but at a cost. The rescue deal will cost the territory $3.3 million. From Monday, ACTTAB will return to the Victorian betting super pool.
The ACTTAB-VITAB saga started with a deal signed late last year. It cost a government minister his job and in recent weeks has devastated the local TAB and racing industries. But overnight the government clinched a deal to sever its ties with the Vanuatu-based betting agency. That cost a total of $3.3 million. The government was quick today to allay fears that the money would come from the pocket of ratepayers.
Well, obviously we'd be looking to ACTTAB to meet those costs, and I think that is only appropriate.
That money will be repaid with interest over the next 10 years or so. Only today did the government frankly admit its level of concern in recent weeks for the future of ACTTAB and its need to be rid of the legacy of the VITAB deal.
Had they not walked away with a settlement such as this, we would have been in a position to very probably not have a TAB operating in the ACT in the long term.
Mr Lamont delivered a stinging attack on opposition leader Kate Carnell, claiming she jeopardised delicate negotiations by suggesting the government could face a $10 million payout.
The amount that has been able to be negotiated, despite the carping of Carnell and others, has been, I believe, appropriately arrived at $3.3 million.
It's not a good result for the ACT. It's a disaster. The taxpayers in this town are going to have to foot the bill. $3.3 million is the cost of a hospice, an adolescent unit at the hospital, nursing home beds, possibly jobs for as many as 300 long-term unemployed.
Mrs Carnell said as a shareholder in VITAB, former Prime Minister Bob Hawke could earn more than $300,000 from the ACT Compo payout. As for the political fallout from the VITAB affair, just 6 months from an election...
It's obvious that there has been damage caused to the government.
VITAB picks up not just the $3.3 million, but around $1.5 million in profit from its brief link with the ACT.
And the parties have reached agreement, and so from that point of view, we are pleased and satisfied with that.
ACTTAB resumes its link with the Victorian TAB from next Monday. But most relief today came from ACTTAB staff whose jobs are now safe.
We just want to be left out of the politicking in the Assembly. We want the opposition to leave us alone. We don't want any more fuss. We don't want to be in the newspapers anymore. We just want to get on with making us the best TAB in Australia.
Win News.
A major economic fillip for the ACT government today with the news that the unemployment...
This is Capital Eyewitness News with Greg Robson and Virginia Nichols.
A $3 million payout ends the VITAB affair.
Renewed optimism for job seekers after a huge fall in Australia's unemployment rate.
And the discovery of a flying boat solves a wartime mystery.
Good evening. A sudden out-of-court settlement has brought an end to the long-running VITAB affair, but at a cost. The ACT government has agreed to pay VITAB more than $3 million for breaking a contract with the Vanuatu-based company.
For many, last night's out-of-court settlement and the restoration of a link with the Victorian TAB next Monday has come just in time. Had the dispute gone on much longer, it was feared many would lose their jobs and confidence in the local racing industry.
Had they not walked away with a settlement such as this, we would have been in a position to very probably not have a TAB operating in the ACT in the long term.
The payout of $3.3 million is less than predicted, but still a burden for the ACT TAB. For the last 2 years, the agency has run at a loss and now faces a huge payout plus spiralling interest charges. With an overall debt that could go well beyond $3 million, the concern for many is who will actually pay.
The ACT TAB in a commercial arrangement will be required to meet repayments of capital plus interest.
But that's not the view of the ACT opposition. It claims the multi-million-dollar debt the ACT government now faces will be paid by taxpayers directly through increased rates and charges.
They'll also have to fund the legal costs and all of the other costs that have been part of this absolute debacle.
Obviously, the government has some capacity to meet unusually high expenses.
According to the opposition, whoever pays, VITAB shareholders, including former Prime Minister Bob Hawke, stand to make a great deal from those unusually high expenses. It's estimated Mr Hawke could earn more than $300,000 from a Labor government blunder.
I'm not embarrassed at all.
With VITAB's withdrawal, the door is now open for ACTTAB to re-enter the Victorian Supertab betting pool on Monday. While that may be good news for punters, for those stung by Canberra's longest betting debacle, a day at the races may never be quite the same again. Grant Galuli, 10 News.
Commonwealth Games officials have moved quickly to stop a row over private sponsorships affecting Australia's team in Canada. This follows reports two of our top medal hopes, Kieran Perkins and Jane Fleming, might be banned from the squad.
At Sydney Airport this morning, farewells and best wishes for the bulk of the Australian team.
Up on gold, green and gold.
Representatives from bowls, boxing, gymnastics, shooting, synchronised swimming and the disabled events are now on their way to the 15th Commonwealth Games. But in Sydney and in Victoria, British Columbia, the issue of sponsorship has been raised again, with bitter results. It began with these Australian newspaper advertisements in which the Commonwealth Games Association thanked its sponsors, but labelled as parasites other companies which tried to give the impression they too had given financial support. It continued when team boss Arthur Tunstall said he'd throw privately sponsored athletes out of the village if they didn't abide by agreements they'd signed.
Mate, I was just warning. I don't threaten anybody. I mean, God, I've been in 9 games and I know you don't threaten athletes and certainly top people like the two people that have been mentioned.
Commonwealth Games Association President Ray Godkin says the remarks were blown out of proportion and there's no question of Perkins, Fleming or anyone else being expelled.
Yes, what's been said in the last 2 days is entirely without substance. There's been complete cooperation with all our high flyers and as I say, it's complete without substance. It's a great pity that it's come out the way it has been and it's done a lot of damage, I think, but we hope we can turn that around the next 2 days.
The team management hopes that's the end of the matter. And it will be, unless, of course, any advertisements or commercials are run featuring athletes in breach of their agreement. In that case, the Commonwealth Games Association will take legal action. In Victoria, Canada, John Gatfield, 10 News.
Good news for the unemployed tonight, with the largest jump in job numbers in 3 years. The markets and even the government seemed surprised today as the latest unemployment figures were released. But the good news is bound to put renewed pressure on interest rates.
The labour force stats, always the last to move in a recovery, are now powering along. A sign to money markets the economy is on the move. In July, 833,900 Australians were looking for work. An unexpected 0.5% drop for a rate of 9.5%. The government thought that was out of reach until next July.
And this is a spectacular result given the fact that the participation rate has also risen.
90,000 new jobs were created in the month, a near record. 7.97 million Australians are now in work, and that is a new record.
The job growth is sustainable so long as we have economic growth and keeping low inflation, and we have the ingredients for that right now.
All states except Tasmania saw improvements. WA and South Australia saw the most dramatic, with unemployment dropping 0.8% in the month. The opposition welcomes the jobs growth, but warns it can't be sustained.
That the current policies are pushing up interest rates.
After the release of the figures, money markets quickly made the judgment the economy is in danger of overheating, and they sent clear signals they expect interest rates to rise soon. The dollar reached a 2-year high of 74.8 US cents, and there was reaction in the bond and share markets. There was also an impact on the dole, but it was more positive. The number receiving unemployment benefits dropped by almost 13,000. Paul Bongiorno, 10 News. In Canberra, the Bureau of Statistics unadjusted figures showed the ACT's jobless rate was unchanged. Overall, the unemployment rate held steady at 6.3% in July.
There was a fall of almost 8% in the number of young people looking for work to just under 30%.
The wreckage of an RAAF Catalina flying boat has been found nearly 50 years after it crashed. Discovered by chance on a remote Indonesian island, the plane was still largely intact, the remains of 9 crewmen entombed in the fuselage.
Catalina A2445 and its crew of 9 was one of 2 RAAF aircraft that flew out of Darwin on July 20, 1944. One never returned from the mission to bomb Japanese shipping at Buru Island, 1,000 kilometres to the north. But the mission might have been doomed from the start.
There was no contact with the lost aircraft following takeoff from Darwin. The other aircraft actually reached the target area. They then returned back without any bombing being done because of poor visibility and bad weather.
The 14-man Australian-Indonesian recovery team landed on the east coast of Buru and took 3 days to find the wreckage on a mountainside just short of the target.
The team itself had to climb 6,000 feet up the mountain, taking with them everything, every single thing that they wished. Food, water, camping equipment.
Speaking from the nearby island of Ambon, team leader, Group Captain Bob Anderson, says the discovery of the wreckage was an emotional experience.
I'm sure any pilot would feel deep regret and sorrow at seeing the disintegration of the aircraft and, of course, the loss of life of the crew on board.
Apparently, the crash site is so overgrown and the area is so hard to get to that any thought of salvaging pieces of the aircraft to bring back to Australia have been abandoned.
The remains of the crew, they've been recovered and have been lodged with the caretaker at the Commonwealth War Graves Cemetery at Ambon.
A full military funeral, including relatives of the men, is expected to take place on Ambon later in the year. Dan Craig, 10 News.
When we continue in a moment, the survivors of the Maura mine blast talk about the tragedy.
Plans revealed for a new gateway to Canberra.
The Sydney casino facing an uncertain future.
And later in entertainment, Canberra's first feature film.
From the creators of Seinfeld comes the next big comedy hit. A show about love.
We'll have dinner. I really think we should have sex.
A show about marriage.
I'm trying to imagine what it would look like in our apartment.
You have one with dog hair already on it. A show about friendship.
This would look good on you.
It would fit great if I could take my ass off.
A show about...
Maybe I should get a gun.
Not much, really.
Oh, yeah. You should get a gun.
So, if you're mad about Seinfeld...
You don't scare me.
You'll love this Emmy Award winner.
Our next table has to be a king.
Mad About You, soon.
Hurry in for hot furniture prices like these. $499 is all you'll pay for a pair of Bravo sofas. The Province 7-piece dining suite now on $599 or $4.21 weekly. At $699, you won't better the hot price for the Tiffany 7-piece dining suite. Get these 2 great leather sofas for $999. Yes, just $999 for 2 leather sofas. There's many more hot prices on furniture, so hurry into Harvey Norman and buy on our famous 9% interest reducible terms.
Hey, 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 Harvey Norman.
When some problems come up in life, there are many people you can turn to. But when other problems arise, you may feel that there is no one to help. But there is. For the price of a phone call, Lifeline provides confidential support 24 hours a day. Please, give your community peace of mind.
Baby peas must be picked at exactly the right moment for maximum sweetness, tenderness and nutrition.
Take care of these babies for me, will you?
Beautiful. McCain babies.